partly because the air is so dirty, has said we're moving away from coal, and they are promising to limit coal. They probably could have peak coal that is reach the maximum and then start down just within the next few years. And I think that this is a huge, huge step forward. It's why China and the U.S. can work together to find a real solution.
What scientific link is there between climate change, global warming, and what we're seeing in terms of hurricanes and storms? And remember, when Hurricane Sandy hit, the question was raised, is this a consequence? And people said, you can't say that it was a consequence, a one-to-one consequence, but it reflects something.
Yes. So I would try to summarize a debate in the following way. First, when Hurricane Sandy, Superstorm Sandy, hit the east coast of the U.S., that storm, for whatever reason, the sea level on the eastern seaboard is 1 foot higher than a century ago. That extra foot higher led to massive flooding, and that definitely is from climate change. That's from warming in many different ways. We'll have more of that. Then on the question of whether we're getting more extreme events overall, more droughts, yes. More extreme precipitation, yes. More heat waves, yes. And most likely, in most of the ocean basins around the world, more top category, Category 5 typhoons and hurricanes. There seems to be an increased ferocity at the very top of the distribution of these tropical cyclones.
Some provide a link between global warming and some of the civil wars around the world.
My colleagues did a study of Syria, which had between 2006 and 2010 the worst drought in its modern history. What happened in Syria was the rains failed. That's a region that is prone to drought, but where global warming is expected to greatly reduce overall rainfall, and that's the trend we see. So in 2006 through 10, failure after failure of crops. By 2010, food prices had soared. Populations had moved from desperate, failed farms in the countryside to the peripheries of cities. There was a lot of unrest with higher food prices, demonstrations against the government in early 2011, a crackdown, brutal crackdown. Then there was an insurrection in response to the crackdown. Then there was an influx of arms. And now there's a full-fledged bloodletting, of course, a terrible disaster. Can you say that the drought was the cause of everything? Of course not. But can you say that it was one of the provoking elements? Absolutely.
Can you say the drought in California is linked to?
The drought in California and the drought in the American Southwest, I was just in Arizona, is the kind of signal that we would expect from the trends that we're on right now. Now, again, whether this particular experience in California proves that or not, it's pretty devastating. It shows how fragile we are. And again, I would refer to my own colleagues' research. They've shown that we're going to be in a century, towards the latter part of the century, where we have mega droughts, meaning decade-long droughts, coming from climate change unless we get off this dangerous path.
President Obama, measure or assess: 1 is intent and goals, 2 is action and deeds.
Intent, very strong to get climate change under control. He wants to leave a legacy. He knows how important this is, no doubt about it. He worked hard for that U.S.-China joint initiative. He has worked very hard for a number of years now to get regulations that would stop the building of new coal-fired power plants. He's under a lot of attack from the fossil fuel industry for this, so he's standing up. So far, the courts are backing every step of the EPA, but this is America. It means lawsuits. But President Obama, I believe, will go forward and sign a strong agreement in Paris at the end of this year.
There are a lot of what they call deniers around.
what their numbers, I don't know, but I mean, you see them from Congress to academics, or the academy as well. What is this? Is there an argument that they make that you think raises questions? Any of their arguments?
First, just to say that about 2/3 of Americans in every recent survey say climate change is happening and it should be controlled. So there's a strong majority.
And part is man-made.
Yes, there's a strong majority for moving in the direction of safety.
What's the essence of the argument that climate deniers make?
I think they're
cyclical, that it is.
I think that there are different groups I've identified.
The most reasonable, then.
Well, I have identified in my own experience 3 different groups. There are real free marketeers who take the logic, we don't want government to regulate anything, therefore climate change can't be true. It would be desperately dangerous if it were true. They go from their politics to science, doubt, or denial. Not very convincing. Of course, there are some religious Yes, there are religious fundamentalists who say the earth is new, all of this science we don't believe in. That's small, but it's real. And then I believe there is the confusion that's caused by a third group, very powerful lobby, the oil, gas, and coal industry. And that's the merchants of doubt argument that they've really invested.
The merchants of doubt.
Absolutely. Naomi Resnick's at Harvard. And I think there's just a lot of truth to that, that there's been a lot of confusion in the media. The core thing for, I think, people to understand is that the climate science is well over 100 years old. And it was in 1896 that the first detailed calculations were made about what higher CO2 would mean for the atmosphere and for the temperature of the planet. And that scientist, Spontaneous, just about nailed it. He just got it brilliantly right. That's more than 100 years ago.
Okay, I heard you say about deed and commitment. What about action and success on the part of the president?
I think that the successes have been very modest because we haven't passed legislation. We don't have a full legal framework other than the particular regulatory initiatives that are being taken. We need a lot more. One thing I'd really like to see from the U.S. government is what we call a pathway. How should the U.S. decarbonize the economy up to mid-century? Not the small steps, but where are we going and how do we get there?
Is there a model for that out there?
There is, and I've been working with teams around the world on what we call deep decarbonization pathways. It's possible to do. Indeed, you need to do it. You need to think ahead. How are we going to tap solar? How are we going to tap wind? What are we going to do about electric vehicles? We need to think ahead about those issues.
You say also that raw capitalism is too powerful for its own good, and you also suggest that our current economic model is blind to the humanitarian issues here.
You know, I'm a macroeconomist by training and by trade for many decades now, and the power of the profit motive is absolutely extraordinary. You just have to take your hat off and hail it. It makes the whole world economy move, but it doesn't control itself. It is absolutely relentless. I consider the world economy a kind of juggernaut. It just grows and it grows and it grows. But here we have reached boundaries of safety. And that's what the market economy by itself won't recognize unless we say, whoa, stop. We don't want warming above 2 degrees Celsius. We need to put some limits on this and steer a bit. And that's what's very hard to do because basically we're a commercial, market-driven society.
Some powerful economic forces would have to make that argument.
Powerful economic, moral, political.
Sure.
We don't have to make
powerful
it.
Economic forces can make the moral argument because they, you know, in essence, some of their, as you suggested, you know, it's a very powerful juggernaut. Globalization on the one hand and growth on the other.
Absolutely.
Thank you for coming.
Great
to see you. Jeffrey Sachs, The Age of Sustainable Development, forward by Ban Ki-moon. Thank you for joining us. See you next time. For more about this program and early episodes, visit us online at pbs.org and charlierose.com.